Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to cover what is object oriented programming, what is class, what is object, what is the difference between class and object, what is the base class of all classes in .NET, does the class occupy any memory space, if not, why, last one from the list is what is the object size in memory when you create new instance. So we are going to cover all these questions. So let's get started. First question from the list is what is object oriented programming? Let's go with real life example first. Let's take house as an example. Generally, before constructing the house, we'll have the plan ready, right? So the plan is just the blueprint for a house. Builders will use that blueprint to make a physical house. They can use the same blueprint to make as many houses as they want. Okay, so technically the blueprint is the class since it is logical. The house is the object. The people living in the house are data stored in the object's properties. Okay, so let's take another example. Okay, here is the blueprint of a car. They can use the same blueprint to make as many physical cars as they want. Okay, so the conclusion is class is logical because this is just blueprint and the object is physical. Okay, so let's get back to the question. What is object oriented programming? The programming in which data is logically represented in the form of a class and physically represented in the form of an object is called as object oriented programming. Okay, let's take a note. The programming in which data is logically represented in the form of a class and physically represented in the form of an object is called as object oriented programming. The programming in which data is logically represented in the form of a class and physically represented in the form of an object is called as object oriented programming. Understanding class and objects in C# is very important. This is because everything in C# is in the form of class and objects. Class and objects are the basic concepts of object oriented programming, which revolve around the real life entities, for example car and house, as we discussed earlier. Okay, so let's go with the next question. What is class in C#? As discussed just now, class is logical. And what class can contain? Fields and methods, as discussed in our previous video, encapsulation video. So class is logical representation of data with related methods. Okay, let's take a note. Class is logical representation of data with related methods because a class can contain fields and methods. Data, also called as data members, variables. We can also call it as fields. We can also call it as attributes also. Here methods also called as functions. In VB.NET we call it as subprograms. Okay, class is logical representation of data with related methods. Okay, now another question might come: what is logical representation? Right? What is logical representation? Class will not occupy any memory space for its members, right? Hence, it is logical representation of data. Okay, since class is logical, it will not occupy any memory space. Class will not occupy any memory space for its members. Hence, it is logical representation of data. Because class is just blueprint or prototype, it will not occupy any memory space. Hence, it is logical representation of data. Okay. Or in simple words, class is a user-defined blueprint or prototype from which objects are created. So you can also mention or in simple words. A class is a user-defined blueprint or prototype, or we can also call it as template, blueprint, prototype, or template from which objects are created. Let's check practically. Class is just a blueprint, okay, from which objects are created. See, I created one object here. Not only one object, we can create as many as. Let me create another one. You can press tab to accept instance. Okay, car1 dot car name equal to this time. Okay, class is a blueprint and we can create as many objects we want. Okay, class is a user defined blueprint or prototype or template from which objects are created. Clear? Now let's see the syntax. To create a class, we simply use the keyword class followed by class name. Okay, let's take a note. Third one. To create a class, you simply use the keyword. Keyword means small letters. Class followed by the class name. Syntax. Access modifier. Optional keyword. Small letters class and class name. User defined class name. Open braces, close braces, and here class members. Okay, and this is the syntax. If you see here, access modifier, class keyword, class, and class name. Let's see what is access modifier. A class access modifier can be public or internal. Okay, a class access modifier can be public or internal only. Let's see why practically. And by default, modifier of class is internal. Let's see practically. A class access modifier can be public or internal. By default, modifier of class is internal. Next one. Let's see this practically. Next one, class keyword. Class. This is keyword. We can use the class keyword to declare the type class. Okay, a class keyword is used to declare the type class. Okay, so we can declare the type class using class keyword. Next one, class name. This is just the identifier. Class identifier or name of the class. Okay, so earlier I mentioned for the class you can specify only two access modifiers, public and internal. When the class is declared as internal, for example here, when the class is declared as internal, then that class can be accessed only within the same project and cannot be accessed from outside the project. Okay, for example, when you declare it as public, it can be accessed within the same project as well as from outside the project. There is no public, no limit. Okay, but default access specifier for the class is internal. Okay, so here if you see, I have two projects, console application 1 and let me close this one, and console application 2. Okay, and I have this car class in console application 1. Okay, and I added reference of console application 1 in console application 2 and I try to access this car class. Okay, car OBJ, and I am able to access because I declared it as public. Okay, when you declare it as public, then it can be accessed within the same project of console application 1 as well as out outside the project, that is console application 2. Okay, now let's change it to internal. Okay, when the class is declared as internal, then that class can be accessed only within the same project. See here, I am able to access within the same project of console application 1. But if you see here in console application 2, I got error. Okay, class car is inaccessible due to its protection level. Okay, if you declare it as internal, you cannot access outside the project. You can only access within the same project of console application 1. Okay, now I mentioned earlier default access specifier for the class is internal, right? So let me delete. Now default is internal. Let me save it. See, still you are not able to access. Okay, so default is internal. That is proved. Let me change it to public and see, save it. Now see, no error. Okay, we are able to access. Let's take a note so far what we discussed. Fourth one, for the class you can specify only to access modifiers. What are those? Public and internal. When the class is declared as internal means within the scope is within the project. Then when the class is declared as internal, then that class can be accessed only within the same project and cannot be accessed from outside the project. Okay, when the class is declared as internal, then that class can be accessed only within the same project and cannot be accessed from outside the project. Sixth one, when you declare it as public means no limit, anywhere we can access, then it can be accessed within the same project as well as from outside the project. When you declare it as public, there is no limit, then it can be accessed within the same project as well as from outside the project. Default access specifier or modifier for the class is internal, that is proved already. Okay, now the question might come, why class should have internal or public only? Because class is a type, it is not a member. We can access either inside the project or outside the project. So we need to declare either internal or public. We cannot declare any other access specifiers. Okay, let's prove that. Let's declare class access modifier as private. Let me declare it as other than public or internal private. Okay, if you see here, elements defined in a namespace cannot be explicitly declared as private, protected internal, or private protected. Let me open this one. Let me open that error code. So it is open. Elements defined in error code is CS1527. Elements defined in a namespace cannot be explicitly declared as private, protected internal, or private protected. Since we cannot declare protected, we cannot declare protected internal as well. Type declarations in a namespace can have either public or internal access. If no accessibility is specified, internal is the default. Okay, clear? Okay. Why class should have internal or public only? Question. Because class is a type. Class is a type. If you see here, type declarations in a namespace can have either public or internal access. It's not a member. We can access either inside the project or outside the project. So we need to declare either internal or public. We cannot declare other access specifiers or modifiers, okay, because class is a type, it's not a member. We can access either inside the project or outside the project, so we need to declare either internal or public. We cannot declare other access specifiers. Okay, next one. A class contains variables and methods as discussed earlier. Okay, variables for storing the data and methods to perform operations on the data, right? So let's take a note. A class contains variables or fields. Purpose is for storing data. A class can also contain functions. What what's the purpose? To perform operations on the data. Okay. Not only variables and functions, we have so many other members of the class. Let's take a note. Members of the class. Class can have the following members like fields, properties, methods, constructors, destructor, indexers, delegates, events, operators, and constants. Okay, let's take a note. A class can have the following members. Fields, as discussed earlier, fields, properties, methods, constructors, destructor, indexers, delegates, events, what else, operators, constants. Okay, we discussed earlier fields and methods. Okay, let's see rest of the class members in our upcoming videos. Okay, yeah, this is about the class. Okay, let's move to third one. What is object in C sharp? As discussed earlier, class is logical and object is physical. Okay, so object is a physical representation of data based on a class. It can be called as instance of a class as well. Okay, so let's take a note. Object is a physical representation of data based on a class. It can be called as instance of a class. Object is a physical representation of data based on a class. It can be called as instance of a class. Okay, syntax. As we have seen, syntax, class name obj is equal to, let me change here, class name obj is equal to variable name is equal to new class name. Syntax, class name variable is equal to new class name. Okay, so here what is new? new is a keyword to allocate memory based on a class. Okay, it will create an instance of a class. Okay, so when you use new keyword means it is instance of a class. Okay, new is a keyword to allocate memory. Without new keyword, memory will not be allocated. Okay, new is a keyword to allocate memory based on a class. It will create an instance of a class. Without new keyword, memory will not be allocated. Let's see practically. New is a keyword to allocate memory based on a class. It will create an instance of a class when you declare with new keyword. Without new keyword, memory will not be allocated. Okay, let's see in detail how memory will be allocated when you create an object with the new operator. Okay, let's see stack and heap. Okay, if you see here, value here integer value type. Okay, the value types directly contain data on stack. Okay, some examples are int, float. Okay, but class is a reference type. Reference types do not contain data directly on stack, but they can contain reference of memory address instead of value. Okay, since class is a reference type, when an object is created using new operator, okay, it internally creates a pointer on the stack memory, and the actual object is stored in a different memory that is called heap. The object is called an instance. Okay, when you create with a new keyword, that is called instance. When an object is created without a new operator, memory will not be allocated in the heap. In other words, an instance will not be created and the object in the stack contains value null. When an object contains null, then it is not possible to access the members of the class using that object. Okay, so let's see practically. First, let's take a note in detail. Okay, when same points I'm going to repeat with stack and heap. When an object is same 2 and 3. When an object is created using the new operator, it internally creates a pointer on the stack memory, and the actual object is stored in a different memory location called heap memory. The object is called instance. When you create with new keyword, it is called an instance. When an object is created using the new operator, it generally creates a pointer on the stack memory, and the actual object is stored in a different memory location called heap memory. The object is called an instance. I'm going to repeat same the second and third pointers. Okay, with stack and heap. Next one. When an object is created without new operator, what will happen? Memory will not be allocated in the heap. In other words, an instance will not be created and the object in the stack contains the value null. Okay, when an object is created without the new operator, memory will not be allocated in the heap. In other words, an instance will not be created without new operator, and the object in the stack contains the value null. Okay, so when an object is null, when an object contains null, then it is not possible to access the members of the class using that object. Let's check practically. When an object contains null, then it is not possible to access the members of the class using that object. Okay, let's see. Let me remove this one. Let me comment. When an object contains null. Okay, now we got warning, cannot access class members. Okay, but when you create with a new keyword, new operator, we can access class members because memory will be allocated. So this is called object. If we say new, when you create with a new keyword, this is called instance. Okay, first one is object. It's like a variable. When you create with new keyword, it is instance. Okay. Okay, so far we have covered 3 queries. Okay, and refer part 2 video for rest of the queries, like difference between classes and object, class and object, what is the base class of all classes in .NET, does class occupy memory space, object say, what's the object size in memory. Okay, thank you all. If you like this video, please do subscribe for more videos. Have a nice day.